Welcome to A Game of Ice and Fire, a video series devoted to a Song of Ice and Fire wargame by Coolman or Not. We cover all aspects of the hobby with tactics and list build videos, painting tutorials of varying levels, and battle reports. In this video, we're coming back to my old Greatjon list with a slight tweak. I did drop the vanilla unit of Sworn Swords in favor for Rodrick Cassel. Like Tyler's back to experimenting with one NCU and has decided to put a watch captain on the Ranger Hunters to see how they shake out. Before I dive into deployment and the rest of the battle report, I wanted to let everyone know that I will be at Adepticon 2019 this year, which is just about a week away from when I'm releasing this video. I'll be arriving Thursday. I'll be spending a lot of time in the free play area for Song of Ice and Fire, and if I get in from the waiting list, I'll be in probably the second tournament that they pull. So if you want to try and get in any games, feel free to hit me up on the Facebook page for Big Top Gaming. Just message me directly there, and we'll try and work something out. Otherwise, just look for me in that area, and I hope you enjoy the Greatjon Umber versus Jon Snow matchup I've got for you. Looking at a pretty symmetrical deployment on both sides. I have Berserkers flanking on each side of the unit with Greatjon and the Great Axes running up the middle. I did deploy back a couple inches because I don't have the top of the turn and I didn't want to give away an early charge. My opponent has Sworn Brothers in the middle with the Rangers flanking on the outside. The marked units for this game are the Ranger Trackers and Ghost, and for my side it's Berserkers on the bottom of the screen and Summer. Marking the dogs is a really nice tactic in this game. For Ghost specifically, it makes sure that your opponent's not going to get too wild with the trying to deny you all your tactics from units. And it also means that the dogs are less likely to commit to anything in the game, while also not being able to fully wipe a unit out like some other units can. So you're not really getting a whole lot of efficacy out of that marked unit for getting those bonus points with Fire and Blood. So getting right into the top here, Tyler's just nudging up those Sworn Brothers with Jon Snow in the unit up just a little bit. He's trying to make it so that I also am not going to be likely to get my charge turn one. So I end up utilizing my first activation to influence that top Berserker unit with Catelyn, and then I use the tactics position, or the maneuver position on the tactics board to get those guys up a little bit. And I do slam them back just a tad bit to make sure that I don't give up a charge from the Rangers too early, at least on the flank side, or Ghost even. So this first turn in Fire and Blood is really, it's more of a dance. You're trying to, you don't have any objectives that you really need to get to, so the objective is to not get the charge first, or not to be charged first. So we're kind of footing around back and forth, trying to not allow these charges to happen. So with the Stark deck, that's a lot less of a problem for me, because I can get a lot of surprising moves that aren't up front, or at least apparent on the table, whereas the Night's Watch only has one card that really extends that threat out. Almost a half of the Stark deck does that for me. A little less maybe because Greatjon's the commander here. Speaking of Greatjon, I did make the change of putting Rodrick in the list. Having a vanilla unit of Sworn Swords, it didn't seem like they were doing a ton. They were just like another body to be there, or just one to take the charge first. So I put in Rodrick so that I could get a little bit more combat effectiveness and have that second NCU to turn on the combat zone for me as well, or the second zone of whatever I needed at the time. Just 2 NCUs feels really good, even if the list was a little bit more aggressive with having only one. So I did move my Berserkers up within range to where if Tyler wanted to put a charge in on those Berserkers, he would really have to go for that 5, I believe, is what we had figured out. but that palisade is also really hindering his ability to pivot the way he wants to. So uh, that's one of the more difficult things to get used to in this game, and we've played plenty now, and it'll still get us every once in a while. So you deploying close to palisades can really jack up your charging because you can't pivot through them or anything like that, or move through them. So we just had the proxy base out there in order to see what exactly they could do in terms of pivoting to make it in. So he decides to just move up. It looks like just an inch even, because the threat on Berserkers is so far. They go 6 inches, and I also have the top of the next turn after this, so he has to be very conscientious about where he's putting his models, because there really is no reason for us to be in the middle of the table. So I think that's one of the things that would make Fire and Blood a little bit less of a dancy game in the early turns, is just having something in the middle that was worth coming for, other than the marked units, I guess. But maybe it's fine. I've played it a few times now, and I don't seem to have any innate problems with the scenario. But I have played this mostly with factions that have some movement tricks, so I haven't played anything like Lannisters or neutral to see how they function. I think the Lannisters would be all right with it, since they can panic things from anywhere, or they're going to want to panic things from the Crown Zone, and they seem to be, at least the more interesting Lannister setup is more of a catcher's mitt instead of something that's going to be really running out there. We did have a friend stop by who we haven't seen in a while, so we did kind of chat about the game during the middle of it. So it's always good for me to just hang out in the store every now and again and see some friends come in who might be interested in picking the game up if I haven't talked to them in a while. So always make sure to chat it up when you can. My Greatjon unit had only slid up just a little. I don't want to give up Greatjon super early, but I do want to be able to start putting out those special tokens, and Ghost is just playing very coy on the top screen, not getting too far ahead and trying to make sure that I don't get those extra points off of it. So the unit of Berserkers, they decided that they did want to take the long bomb charge. I think it was they needed a 3 to get in, maybe a 3. So they do make it, and the Night's Watch player plays, I think it's the shield that protects the realm of men. Oh no, this was the Watcher in the Night, or whatever the heck that card's called, where... Oh, no. I tell you, I really need to get the second camera so I can keep up with these objective cards. Or is it Horn That Wakes the Sleeper? Is that the one that... Yeah, so maybe that's what it is. What I really just need to do is play a game as Night's Watch, but I imagine that will be very uninteresting to watch because I will probably be playing into Night's Watch. And although it's good to explore the mirror match, that seems like a meat grinder of a game that will just blow. So I didn't play any combat tricks on this unit here, but they did take or force a lot of saves, and it looks like Jon Snow's unit's going to be eating 6 casualties, which is not real good for them. And they do fail their morale by 1. Or no, they pass it. So Jon Snow gets 2 guys back, so it's 1 whole rank gone, which is fine for me. It just means that those Sworn Swords aren't going to be swinging back very hard when they start connecting again. So this, me giving the charge up, or getting the charge to start that game happening up on top, means that the Rangers are able to get in on my flank. And they're not a particularly nasty unit when it comes to combat tricks in terms of their raw output. So I lose 3 Berserkers. I get pretty lucky with that, since they don't have the greatest save. So saving 3 out of 6 was nice. And they pass their morale. They don't have many issues, especially now since I think they're standing on a weirwood tree. And I know that the weirwood trees are something that I put down frequently when we deploy terrain. But I'm thinking now, since I have a smaller footprint without having that extra unit of sworn swords, and I have more of the movement shenanigans that I can work with, I might start experimenting with forests and bogs and things like that to get my opponent to steer clear of certain areas. So Rodrick comes down on the swords tactics position, or the combat position, so that I can make an extra attack with the berserkers that I've got. I end up influencing the berserkers with Rodrick just to get some extra output from them, and I put vulnerable on the veterans that are hanging out a little bit, that are looking like they're ready to get charged by that look like they're getting ready to get charged by those other berserkers. I do have vulnerable on them, and the attacks just wipe out Jon's unit. There's a couple exploded sixes in there, and the sundering really hurts. So no cards from the Night's Watch player to try and keep that up. So I gain 1 point from killing that unit. Rodrick is... He at first he can seem a bit redundant in this list, because there are models that can do crit blow, and there are models that also give out vulnerable, mostly the sword captain. But being able to put down vulnerable for a unit like the great axes, or just in another spot where you might have used the sword captain's order already, is really beneficial. I think he's a great addition to this army, and just really drives that I always have some kind of really insane combat trick ready to happen. I don't think I don't think he is redundant whatsoever. So we finish the turn, and it rolls back to me. I think I ended up keeping my hand, although maybe I forgot to draw cards and we end up rewinding it just a little bit to get those cards back in hand. Oh no, never mind. We didn't finish the turn. I still had one more unit to go, I think. Maybe. Yeah, one more unit to go. So now we have even position on the battlefield in terms of 5 or 6 activations total. Ghost is still around with 4 other units, with 1 NCU, and then I've got my 4 units with 1 NCU, or with 2 NCUs, sorry. So this is a tough place to be, because I don't know which thing I want to have happen first. So I end up putting Catelyn on the maneuver position so that I can get it for the card I just played, which was Sudden Charge. And then I influence the Berserker unit there. So they're going to be able to get in on these guys without any problems. They don't even have to roll to see if they have a disordered charge or anything. And I want to get on that marked unit. And I'm not sure what... I think we were discussing the charging rules again, but which seems to always come up. So it looks like I did have to roll for that charge. I must not remember what I actually did here, but I know that I think I played Sudden Charge on that one, where I don't have to roll for it. Oh well. Speaking of charges, there was a live YouTube stream from Peacekeeper Games, and it was a live interactive discussion on charging rules, especially with Adepticon coming around. Since people seem to have more problems with the charging rules, it seems like that fella just wanted to try and set the narrative of what the charging nuances were before it became an issue. And that was really beneficial. I don't think I have any more questions on charging. Some of the charges that I've done in this video, or in this series before, that were wrong were actually right, and some that I thought were right were actually wrong. So definitely worth checking out that stream and the comments for the consciousness of of the decision process that went on. But Berserkers on the end, they lit up the Rangers pretty hard. I think they ended up taking 7 or 8 wounds total, and the Rangers get me on the flank. I kind of had to pick... Ranger Hunters on the side. I kind of had to pick which Berserker unit I wanted to go with, and I opted for the one on the bottom so I could at least avoid a charge from the veterans. I thought they were the more important ones to go for. So that top Berserker unit, I think it's only got 5 bodies left in it, but they passed their morale on a really low number just because they have a... Oh, wait, no, they failed by 1, I'm sorry. So I lost another one. So I think I only have 2 left in that unit right now. So I wouldn't mind trying to activate them earlier in order to get something out of them. But we'll see what ends up happening next. I'm just trying to go over some of my tactics cards to see what the heck I played. Oh no, sudden charge just... I was mixing sudden charge and devastating impact, which is something that I do frequently. So I took the position on the tactics board and was able to charge and make something vulnerable instead of re-rolling it. So I still got the 1 there, but it wasn't too terrible in terms of how well I hit them. And the Ranger Hunters, they do retreat to the side to get into my back line, which is really problematic. They definitely are going to be hard for me to negotiate without having any cavalry over there. And it looks like Rodrick here went down on the combat position so that I could try and finish off the Ranger Trackers, seeing as they're a marked unit. And after calculating damage, I believe we wipe the unit. I'm pretty sure we do. I think Tyler's just trying to figure out... yeah, he was trying to figure out if he had anything he could do to fix that. But I do wipe the unit, which is a ton of points because they're worth 2 points. Killing the unit on its own is worth 1. And then killing something with a marked unit, which those Berserkers are, got me another point. So I went from 1 to 5 points. That was a huge bump in terms of points. So I get the Berserkers to move into the side of the veterans because I plan on going after them next, with them being loaded up with Rodrick and Catelyn's influences. So Ghost comes in. I was really hoping that Ghost would miss one of these attacks, but I don't think Ghost does, and that takes out the remainder of that unit. I was checking the timing of Ghost to see if I had a chance to sneak a card in there, and I didn't. So Tyler gets his first point out of wiping a unit of Berserkers, which I wasn't super excited about, but I really did want to try and get that Ranger Tracker unit, and I probably could have waited a turn, but I stick to what I did there, even if it wasn't the most efficient. So since those Berserkers went with sudden charge, they didn't really activate, so now they get to actually charge, and they go into the flank of the veterans, which is not a place that they want to be. So I think we get 2 explosions and 6 other hits, so that's 10 saves total, and they're going to be saving on 5s for veterans. And they lose, I think it was 9 total veterans on that one, and they pass their morale, but that's a huge chunk of veterans that go down, which kind of is what this list is designed to do, is break up these armies that can swing attrition. My army cannot attrition very well. I don't have the greatest saves, so the gist for this list is to try and just cut through things as quickly as I can before they actually start hurting me. I think we're just trying to check to see what Greatjon's charge would look like if he went into the veterans. I think Tyler's looking at trying to just map out to see if it was worth healing them or not. So he does slam down Aemon, and I don't have anything to stop that from happening, so he heals him up a couple. But I think he ended up putting Aemon on the tactics position, so he didn't get to restore a bunch of them. He just got to get some extra cards and then the 3 wounds that Aemon would bring back. So here I'm trying to negotiate how the charge is going to end up working on Greatjon into the veterans, He's within long range, so he's able to activate and put a extra token on them from the Fire and Blood scenario. But I'm really just trying to figure out what my moves are going to be like here. So I end up doing what I think is best for Summer right now and charging those Rangers in the side. Not that Summer has great combat presence, but Summer was one of the only models, or is the only model in my army, especially now that that maneuver position's taken down, that could get into those Ranger Hunters and just tie them up while the rest of my army was able to go do their thing. Now the Great Axes don't have to worry so much about Ranger Hunters coming at them from the back. At least, you know, Summer's there to make sure that the Rangers can't get off of that and put some more damage on them. So Summer's kind of like a sacrificial piece right now. At this point, the activations on Tyler's side take a little bit longer. We haven't been playing this game very long, maybe 10 or 15 minutes total, and massive breakout casualties, like the being able to chain the sudden charge into the combat position into a regular charge onto the veterans was a huge blow, and it's just taking a bit of time to adjust to how to play the game properly while only having 3 or 4 trays left of models. The veterans do spin around, and they're going to start swinging into the Berserkers. They connect with a couple things, and I only lose 2 Berserkers in total. But they did have Vulnerable on them from the Tactics position that Amon took, so I lose 2 more on top of it, and they pass their morale. Especially being with near that Weirwood, it's really hard to cut down Berserkers. So now Greatjon's is gonna put the extra coin token on them, and I think this is not. Don't pay attention to this charge at all. This is stupid. Well, it's not stupid. I was just reading just trying to do the charge rules like I thought. But that charge was not okay. When you pivot, there's this idea that you can pivot to get extra mileage out of it, which you can still do. It's just that you have to move directly towards the, you have to move directly forward, which is, I think, a little different. So I'm not turning and then moving directly towards the unit that I'm charging. I have to move directly forward in the way that I'm facing. So I wouldn't have been able to make that charge by turning that way. So with the dice, though, I would have been able to make it if I turned normally. Just don't do that. That was a bad Brian move. So Greatjon ends up killing most of the unit of the veterans with only 1 left. I don't think it was. I think there was a card that got played where they get to come back on 1 if they pass a morale test, which is kind of a bummer because that unit really wanted to be clear and try and get out of the way of the other Sworn Brother unit coming into them. So Amon puts Vulnerable on them, pretty sure. Something put Vulnerable on them. The Sworn Swords can't quite get into the flank. It looks the more of their base is on the front side. So this was correct in that we can, well, no, never mind. You can't pull. So another thing from the charge discussion that isn't in the rules but has been ruled on in the forum is that when you're engaged, you don't get to be shifted around like that. So I shouldn't have moved. It doesn't have a whole lot of impact on this game since there's no objectives or anything. But if you are engaged with an enemy and they do the whole like try to shift you over, you can't do something like that. It's not actually a legal deal. Greatjon takes a lot of casualties from that Sworn Sword hit, almost the entire unit, right? With having Vulnerable on them for whatever reason, probably some card. He does pass the morale test but just barely. So Greatjon's the only one left in that unit, still holding there, and I'm happy with that because it means that I can still utilize him to get the extra counters out that I need. And now the Great Axes come in. It's not often that I actually get to have their first engagement be the alpha, you know? Like, I'm always worried. I'm used to them just getting charged first because that's kind of how I try to hang them out there. And that's a lot of saves. Bran ended up rolling pretty well on the D3. So I think this was 4 saves were failed. And then another 4 saves ends up taking out almost 2 ranks worth of Sworn Brothers. And now we come around again to the third turn in the game, and Tyler's got the top of this one with not a whole lot left on the table. This has been I think real time, we're now about 50 minutes, less than an hour into the game, and the Night's Watch forces are pretty well crippled. The Berserkers are really putting out a lot of work. Now, I've lost some pieces too. I mean, Summer I've basically consigned to death over there, just to make sure that the Ranger Hunters didn't get a whole lot of work done in the backfield of my army. Greatjon's unit is almost completely gone, and I am down 1 Berserker unit, but I am up quite a few on points right now. And there's not a whole lot left in terms of models in the middle that can really sustain against all of the attacks that I have coming up. So Aemon goes down on the combat space. It looks like he is filling up the Sworn Brothers just to get some more bodies in there. He won't be able to get over the over to that 3rd rank, so it's just the 2nd. And then swings in looking for those 3s to hit, I'm pretty sure. And I think these are going into Greatjon Umber just to try and get him off the table, to stop me from throwing new things out. So I do play Lash Out. So Greatjon is the only one left in the unit, but that card triggers after you're attacked. So I do get to do it before he dies, at least from what I understand. I get to do it before he goes out, and takes away 5 wounds from that Sworn Brother unit. There's not a whole lot there, so it's a good thing Aemon came down and gave him some health, because if they weren't, they probably would have been wiped with that attack. I think now we're looking at the Berserkers activating before any of my NCUs go, just so we can get rid of models before they start attacking me. I do want to try and get rid of activations before my opponent actually takes them. So they use the order to make that unit vulnerable from the Sword Captain. And it looks like we got 6 hits through. Yeah, 6. And that does take out the unit, but we get to play the card where if they pass their morale, they get to stick around. And this one does not happen. So we're just doing the calculations on what the morale was, and it's just not quite enough to keep that veteran unit around. So I go up another point. I think I'm sitting at, it should be 7 right now. And I've been killing a lot this game, and it for some reason it feels like I haven't been in terms of the way the points are going, but I'll have to reread the scenario, but I'm pretty sure we played it correctly in terms of how many points I was racking up for all of these. Oh, well, that one should have gotten me up to 8 points there. So maybe I'm not seeing the dice that I've calculated out correctly, because the veteran unit did have 1 token on them. I'd get 1 for the victory through combat, and then I'd get 1 because the Berserkers are a marked unit. Now the Sworn Brothers use their normal activation to go into the Great Axes. They lose a whole rank, +1, and they don't roll super hot on their morale test, so they lose another couple guys. I put down Catelyn on the Tactics position just to grab some extra cards in my hand, since my cards are really nice, and it would be good to get some of the Greatjon Tactics cards to come up, because they are quite nice for these later games where you're trying to pull out extra wounds. the Ranger Hunters decide to activate and go into Summer in order to try and get that dog out of there just for some extra points and free up the Rangers to do what they need to do. Summer doesn't. He-Man is rolls, so Summer goes down. But I do get to play the North Remembers, so I get to remove the activation token that was placed on my Berserkers, so they'll get to go again, which is really nice. And they charge in on Jon Snow's, or well, no, Jon Snow is dead. So we charge in on the other unit of Sworn Brothers, and in their flank, they end up not passing. Now, I think if I've done the points right here, not that I've done them right on the table, I should have closed the game out now because a marked unit killed another unit, so that would have gotten me 2 more victory points, putting me up to 10. So if I'm remembering right, I kill the opponent's marked unit, that got me 2. Victory through combat puts up 1. Killing with a marked unit puts me at 1. So that's 4 total for that whole activation. And then we took out the veterans, or we took out Jon Snow's unit, so that put me at 5. And then the marked unit took out the veterans, and they had the coin on them, so that would have been another 3 for, maybe I was doing the points right and I just wasn't paying attention. Oh, I don't know. But the Great Axes do get a charge off onto the Ranger Hunters, and they blow up their dice like crazy. They've got Rodrick on them, so they're getting extra hits with the critical blow. And Bran rolled a 3 on his D3 hits, so it's a ton of saves. I think 12 of them in total. And then he had to re-roll 5 or 6, 7 of them. And I think that was just one-shotting the unit. So this was a very fast game for the Umber side. Does what it did what it was supposed to do. So there are a lot of if statements when it comes to calculating points for Fire and Blood, but whether they're there or not, I think that the victory was pretty well settled for the Umbers. And I hope you enjoyed watching this video, even if it was a quicker one, and I look forward to making the next one for you.